April 30th, 2020 meeting of the Woodbridge Township Board of Education will please come to order. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Sedana?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here.
Mr. Velez? I know he's here, and Mr. Della Pietro.
Here. Hey, Mr. Secretary, as required by the Sunshine Law, please read the notice of meetings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows. January 3rd, 2020, April 17th, 2020, emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Avenel Middle School and the Board of Education Administration Building, also published on the school district website.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ms. Anderson, please read the closed session statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to motion for the approval of the following closed session statement. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempt from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters. Closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. I have a motion by Ms. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. All in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Motion's carried. Okay, at this time, the board's going to retire to close session, and we'll be back when we're done. Okay, at this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for a salute to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do I have a motion to reconvene?
So motion?
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Molnar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. I have a motion by Brian Molnar. I have a seconded by Jonathan Treebwasser. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Sedana?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here.
Mr. Velez?
Here.
And Mr. Della Pietro?
Here. Okay, will someone make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
So motioned.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, none. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mr. Secretary, please state for the record any notices of bids received by the board.
Thank you, Mr. President. On March 31st, 2020, we received Perrette Somgen bid project number 8396 for partial roof replacement at the Indiana Avenue School number 18.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Okay, to facilitate the flow of this virtual meeting, all questions and comments from the public will be addressed after the presentation of all agendas. Okay, Dr. Zaga, please state for the record the superintendent reports for the month of March of 2020.
Mr. President, I have the following reports: student registers and fire drill reports, suspension reports for elementary and secondary schools, and the bomb threat reports.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaga. Superintendent's agenda. Dr. Zaga, do you have any recommendations?
Mr. President, I have 10 items to present to the board.
Okay, I have a motion for the superintendent's agenda. Someone make a motion? Say again, you were cut. Okay. All right, I have a motion by Mr. Treewiser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Molnar. Any comments or questions from the board? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes. Policy and planning agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Policy and Planning Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following 12 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris has a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Velez. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Velez. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Delapietro?
Mr. Harris?
I can't resist, even online. I wanted to highlight for the public that on tonight's agenda, we are making the adjustment to the school calendar using those 3 unused snow days, applying them to the back end of the school calendar. And now the school year will end on Wednesday, June the 10th. Please note that Wednesday, June the 10th. Among the committee's discussion, I want to thank everybody for a robust discussion over the past month. We are in a momentum. Our students are learning, our teachers are teaching, and our parents are doing the best they can with under the circumstances. So given the weather improving, the thinking was to shoulder on through the school year and finish while we still have the students' attention, and spring fever hasn't quite stolen them from us. So I want to thank the board for working on that. And parents, please again note June the 10th. And I know Dr. Zaga has assured us that the principals are meeting on a weekly basis, thinking and talking about how we end the school year, whether that's in the buildings or not, and how we capture some of those end of the year programs such as graduation. So all those things are under consideration, and I'm sure the administration will be revealing those when the time is appropriate. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Any other comments from the board? Okay, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Delapietro.
Yes. Okay. Finance and insurance agenda, Mr. Tamburello.
On this early. Finance and Insurance Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 26 items. This evening, I move for the adoption of the foregoing 26 items.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Tamburello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have seconded by Ms. Bourdain. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President?
Mr. Harris?
Sorry, on item number 1, I know this is not my vote. I'll just issue a one-word statement on that. On item number 1, I just want to let the public know, last meeting, I mentioned my position on the budget. It's item number 1 today. From a budgetary standpoint, it's a good budget, but invested in many things, as I had enumerated last meeting, and the administration's done a wonderful job on it. and it's above all, it supports our students. But from a taxpayer standpoint, I think we could do better. For many, many years, we were underfunded, and as a result, we were hyper efficient about the way we spent our dollars. And now that we're gaining more, we've lost our way a little bit. So over the next year, I will work with the administration on doing better. In my opinion, spending more wisely. I know the administration works hard at that, but this budget could have been better. So I just wanted to express those sentiments before I vote.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Yes, through the board president.
Yeah, Mr. Tamburello.
Mr. Wolferman, can you clarify the exact item number that the budget will be voted on?
The exact item number?
Yeah.
Item number 1 is it's not item number 1. I apologize.
I want to clarify for everyone.
Yes. Let me take a look. I'm actually looking for it on this agenda. I apologize.
Does anybody refute? It's number 1. It says adopt the budget, the 2020-2021 budget.
Yeah, it's item number 1. I apologize. It is item number 1.
I'm looking at.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying it wasn't item number 1. It is item number 1.
My apologies for the confusion.
Okay, is there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
On item number 1, I'll be abstaining, and I'll be voting yes on the remaining agenda.
Mr. Molnar?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Abstain on item number 1, yes on all others.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
And Mr. Della Pietro?
Yes. Okay, athletics and extracurricular agenda. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Athletics and Extracurricular Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following 7 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Harris. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar? Mr. Molnar? One more time, Mr. Molnar?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello? Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
And Mr. Della Pietro?
Yes. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Buildings and Grounds Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Business Administrator, recommend, oh, geez. Oh, man. I forgot the script here, guys. I apologize. Buildings and Grounds Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Business Administrator, present the following two items. I move the adoption of the foregoing. I apologize.
That's okay. Do I have a second?
Yes. Second.
That's okay. Okay, Ms. Borden. Okay, are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, personnel agenda, Mr. Molnar.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Personnel Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, presents the following. Tonight, I will be moving 27 items.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Molnar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Ms. Anderson. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
On item number 17, I'll be abstaining in the name Kathleen Harris, voting yes on the remaining items.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
I will be abstaining in the name of Michael Henderson at items 13 and 15, yes on all other items.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Della Pietro.
I'll be abstaining in the name of Linda Della Pietro on item number 17. Yes on all other items. Okay, Mr. Bush, do you have any recommendations?
None at this time, sir.
Okay. Is there any old business that should be brought to the attention of the board?
Della Pietro?
Mr. Harris?
Yes. Through the chair to Dr. Massimino. Dr. Massimino, I understand that kindergarten registration is still open. Is that correct? And could you speak to very quickly to how the public, who still needs to register their child for kindergarten for next school year?
Sure, Mr. Harris.
Yeah.
We are taking appointments pretty much virtually. If the parent calls and leaves a voicemail, we have somebody from registration calling them back, walking them through. We streamline the process prior to distance learning, so it's a much more fluid process for parents to utilize. We're going to send some publication out and just remind everybody that, while they can't go in, there is still an opportunity to get their child registered. We are getting them on a daily basis. Obviously, it's limited on how many we can get done because it is virtual and there are certain things that we just can't accomplish, but we can get the children registered. And when we return back to hopefully a bit of normalcy and we can have contact with our kids again, we'll finish the process. But in terms of getting them in and getting them registered, we are continuing to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Massimino.
Any other old business? Okay, is there any new business that should be brought to the attention of the board? Mr. Harris?
All right, guys.
Okay.
I want to give a shout out to, this is a true shout out to the students at Colonial and Woodbridge High Schools. The two organizations have been founded in the past couple of weeks, Colonia Cares and Woodbridge Cares. I want to highlight these students here real quick. I don't know all their names, but what they're doing is they are raising money by selling lawn signs that say Colonia or Woodbridge Cares and T-shirts that say the same. The money will be used to purchase gift cards through small businesses here in Woodbridge Township. Those gift cards, mostly I understand to food, places that establishments that sell food, will be donated to the food banks and to needy families. It's a total win-win for everybody in the community. Those of us who are fortunate to have a job and some disposable income, we could support the charity. It's supporting restaurants that are likely struggling or have a reduced capacity at the moment, and then supporting those less fortunate who need a hand. So a giant kudos to those students with the Colonia and Woodbridge Cares program. They're going to be having a Colonia Cares Day. I don't know about a Woodbridge Cares Day. I know they're working together now on May 16th. It's a Saturday, so they're encouraging people to show off your lawn sign and your T-shirt. You can go online, go on Facebook. They both have Facebook pages where you can buy an item and show your support for our students as well as our local businesses and families here. Really great stuff. The governor gave them a shout out. I believe they were on NBC4 as well very recently. Lastly, on testing, I just wanted to highlight these couple things. Students and parents, all SATs and ACTs are canceled until September. Great chance to just study up and practice would be a great opportunity. I know that throws off your college admissions process a bit, I'm sure, but you can catch up a little bit. For parents of high school students that are taking AP classes, those tests will be administered online. And then some really good news from the governor's office. He has, and the Federal Department of Education, they have suspended standardized testing for the rest of the years. I think that's a great thing. So no, oh geez, I forget the name of the test, formerly known as the PARC. So that's a good thing. No longer the stress for our students. They could concentrate on working with their teachers and learning our robust curriculum. One more shout out I have listed here is to our guidance department. It was suggested from a parent, and kudos to the administration and the high schools for making this happen. Our guidance counselors are calling through their students and checking on them. Something that often they simply don't get to do. They simply don't have the time. The time is there, and they are catching up on our students, making sure they're doing their college applications or trade school applications, or simply just checking on their status and their well-being. So to all of our teachers, Teacher Appreciation Day is coming up, Teacher Appreciation Week. Educational support professionals was just a couple days ago. Thank you for all you've done throughout this ordeal. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Mr. President, for the time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Any other new business? Okay, I just have Mr. Tamburello.
If I could, I think I want to just piggyback on Mr. Harris's. Also, shout out to the Island schools. We had 5 schools combined, and also create using teacher appreciation funds, and they're also going to support first responders by getting those gift cards, local restaurants, and I think it's a great endeavor. Again, 5 schools coming together and sharing their funds. I think most of our schools, if not all of them, have done something special, something extraordinary, whether it's a teacher, a class, or the entire school, and supporting their community. I think that was a great job. Everything I've been seeing on Twitter and online seems that we are managing this crisis well. And I said it on Tuesday night as we were discussing the budget. I really want to commend the district, I think, for being prepared, quite frankly. Our tech was ready to go. Our devices were in the hands of the kids who needed them. I don't think there's any other district that could tout the tech equity that we do here in Woodbridge. And other than that, a little bit of growing pains in that first week where we got a lot of calls from teachers, a lot of calls from parents. After that first week, it's this distance learning seems to be running smoothly. And I think it's a credit to Dr. Zaga and his team, and quite frankly, the board for funding everything we needed to attack this crisis. I think a good job by all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Tamburello. Anyone else? Okay, I just have
Frank?
Okay, Ms.
Sorry, Mr. President. I have 2 things I'd like to one, I want to shout out to all the volunteers of the year from the President's Council. Unfortunately, that dinner was supposed to be about 2 weeks ago, and that had to be canceled. As well, I'd like to shout out to the teachers and the assistants of the year. That dinner also had to be canceled. We tried to postpone it, but I don't think that dinner is going to happen either. So for all of their hard work, I think it'd be remiss not to mention. Don't know all their names. Hopefully, there's a list somewhere that they would get the recognition that they so deserve. Their dinner was canceled, so it's unfortunate. The other thing I would like to let you know is PACE is going to be held remotely this year in the same format that we've been working on and since March. Even if things open up a little bit, we feel out of the safety and concern for our kids who are probably the most vulnerable kids in the district, that, they remain home where they're safe. Social distancing is not probably something that can happen for them at this time until we really work something out. These kids will stay home, but there's a great plan being put together for our kids. And I think hopefully everybody's going to be very happy with it. Anyone that's involved in CPAG or PACE should be receiving an email from us shortly with a survey. We're going to have a couple of meetings and try to have sort of a town hall meeting with Ms. Bear and Dr. Zega to iron out some parent concerns. But I think in the meantime, everything has been going well, and PACE is going to be online. So there we go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Verdin. Anyone else?
Mr. President,
Mr. Molnar?
just to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Bourdain was saying, with the volunteers of the year, and this is the time of year where our staff and our students, there's a lot of celebrations, ceremonies, and a lot of accolades to go around for jobs well done. And I know in this new world that we're living in, graduation ceremonies are up in the air, National Honor Society, scholarship nights. But just to tell everybody out there, to our students and our teachers and our faculty and all our employees, this is a different time we live in. And to just remember, at the end of the day, keep your eye on the prize, which is being safe. We've come this far, 6 weeks into this. And I realize, in my house, I have a daughter who's a senior and she's looking forward to her, graduation. But at the end of the day, we all need to stay safe. We can't do all this work and then at the end just get a little lazy and jump the gun. Let's just take the advice of the experts, the health experts, and let's just continue to do what we're doing, because at the end of the day, we all need to be safe, and we are all one town, we are all one family, and let's just continue to keep doing what we're doing, and eventually we'll get to the point where we'll be able to honor the students and the staff for all their, recognition for everything that they've done. So just everybody be safe and God bless.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Molnar. Anyone else? Okay, I just have a couple things. When this pandemic started and we closed the schools, the board formed a new committee. It's the Emergency Crisis Committee. And that committee meets at least once a week. And we meet with the administration and just to go over if there's any problems, any issues as far as, with getting food out and the logistics of remote learning. We also implemented the incident management system. For those of you in emergency services, you guys are very familiar with it. But this is it's part of our pandemic plan. It's a format to follow in times like this. So we have that in place. But listening, going to these meetings that we have on Friday, Dr. Zega, I have to commend you because you and your staff are doing an excellent job. I mean, to go from, where kids are going to school and then the next day turn it around 180 degrees and do remote learning. I think we did a really good job, and you and your staff have to be commended for that. The teachers are doing an excellent job. As your board president, I'm proud. The teachers, this is new to them. They are, they're out there. They're helping the kids. The secretaries, I watch my wife every day. Kids that don't call in, they're calling and tracking them down. If we don't hear from him, we send our security director out and check on them. So, I mean, you guys are really doing an excellent job. I can't commend you enough. I'd like to thank the board for your gracious donations to the St. James Food Pantry. They are definitely in need of food. We brought over $200 worth of food. And Jonathan Trewas, I'd like to thank you for use of the Restaurant Depot card, because we were able to get a lot of food, and they were very thankful. Again, our bus drivers, excellent job. you couldn't ask for probably a better system. I mean, Mark Sinelli, to have this thrown on him, delivering, have our bus drivers delivering, food to the families who need it. Excellent, flawless. Mark, if you're watching, congratulations. I can't thank you enough. Our janitors, keeping our schools clean, sanitizing everything. We all know we've all lost loved ones to this disease, and we know it's not a joke. Just know that your Board of Education and your administration is working very hard, especially behind the scenes. Every board member, we're probably talking a couple times a week. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that the public doesn't see. But we are working hard. Some of us get burnt out. Dr. Zega, I'm surprised you're not burnt out yet. This is week 6, but I have to say, you are doing an outstanding job. You and your staff, your central administration. This is something that never ever happened before. I'd never thought I'd be doing a Zoom meeting. As board president. I mean, it's hard enough, when we're all at the podium and doing it, but doing it, remotely like this is all new for me. I'm still learning, but I just want to thank everyone, the board, the administration. I said I can't thank you guys enough. So with that, does anyone else have anything else? Okay.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Molnar.
Not to rob a line from the mayor, but this is why Woodbridge is the best town around. And I just want to thank Dr. Zega too, because every morning, the Township of Woodbridge, we have our COVID-19 call, and Dr. Zega is on that call every day. And this is why we're able to do what we do, because the municipality works hand in hand with the Board of Ed, because we are all one family. And this is how we're able to help out each other with resources. The board had some, PPE and cleaning stuff in the beginning that they were able to give to the township. The township had stuff they were able to give to the board. And this is what happens when, I know there's a lot of people out there in the public that don't like the fact that the township and the board work together, but for the good of everything, that's the only way you succeed, is when all forms of government work together. Municipal, school district, county, state, everybody's been working together. And this is why, we're in the position we're in right now. It's a hard time, but we're doing what we have to do to get through it.
Thank you, Mr. Molnar. Exactly. Definitely a team effort. Anyone else for the board? Any new business? Okay. Okay, in keeping with our past practice, we will open this portion of the meeting for questions and comments from the public. If you wish to say something, please call 732-602-8472 or 732-602-8550. When prompted, please provide your name, the section of the township in which you reside, and please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes in accordance with Regulation 1100D. Okay, I will not answer any questions until you have completed your 5 minutes and allow you full opportunity to say what you need to say, so as not to interrupt your time. Okay, we'll give it a few minutes, see if anyone calls in. How long do we?
Mr. President, we have our first caller coming in.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi, Dr. Zega. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. This is Christine Gonzalez. I work over in the district, yeah, as you know. I
Yes.
just wanted to make a comment about us.
Go ahead. You're on the air.
So I just wanted to let you know that the students of School 18, I've been working at the hospital every weekend for the last 7 weeks. It's been daunting, to say the least. And the students at School 18 have been remarkable, and I think that they should be acknowledged for what they've done. The parents have gotten together and donated an exorbitant amount of food over to the staff. The students have made cards for all of the healthcare workers and the frontliners that are over there every day working very hard. And I think it's just very important that they're acknowledged for everything that they're doing. And the parents have been absolutely wonderful towards the staff at the hospital as well as myself. So I just wanted to let you guys know, and I'm very proud of our school and of our district and where we're at.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Okay.
We'll hang on a sec, Mr. President. I believe we have another caller on the line. Mr. President, right now we have no one on hold and no callers.
Okay. Mr. Bush, how long, is there a certain amount of time or?
I think the period of time during which you gave, since you gave the number was also the time during that last caller. I mean, I think it's been probably about 5 or 6 minutes. So you're certainly free to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Okay, if there's no more callers, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Molnar, seconded by Mr. Treeweiser. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? Okay, meeting is adjourned.